friends in the US. Also, thanks very much and a warm welcome from on behalf of ITC, from the International Trade Center, with whom you're working together. I think we have a very interesting discussion today, start of a discussion, I would rather say, on the US market. Just to put this a little bit into the context of our work and under the project, you remember I've been always telling this at the beginning of any webinar or workshop. We would like to help Egyptian companies to export more, and through this additional exports create jobs. And we hope to achieving this by working with enterprises, so a subset of selected enterprises that you are part of it, and also working with institutions. And this workshop, in a way, serves both purposes. Yes, we have mainly looking now into the market, which is of interest to enterprises, but at the same time is also interesting to the associations, especially the Export Council, the Apparel Export Council, the Textiles and Home Textiles Export Council, but also the Fashion Design Center and others, to know, because that's the clients of your client. And it's important always to understand the client of the client. So what's happening in the US market, where your exporters are going to export. So we have a distinguished panel of 5 specialists from the US market, everybody specializing in different aspects of interest to stakeholders in Egypt. I said at the beginning that this will be only a first kind of interactivity, because these are experts who will work with us for the next couple of months to help companies and help institutions to move the next step forward in order to achieve additional exports to the US market. So I'm very pleased that they will introduce you, but we have Peter Kildorf, who will look mainly on the institutional part, working together with the Fashion Design Center and also the export councils. We have Modita, who will work a little bit more on the academic side and see, okay, what is enterprises are needing in terms of training in academic level, and what can the academic level do in order to satisfy these requirements. And then we have 3 experts looking really on the enterprise level, and 2, some of you know already. It's Anne, who is coaching some of the companies that are presently participating in the virtual edition of Magic, Sourcing and Magic. And we have Francis, who are also doing the same thing with another group of companies, also doing for Magic. And I see that Francis somehow is at Magic today. I'm not sure. And he has a background of saying Sourcing and Magic. And as a message to the other enterprises that are not yet or not participating in Magic this year, both Anne and also Francis will also take over a couple of other companies to help them, to coach them, to improve their access to the US market and US clients. And then we have Jill. She's also working with the enterprises, and both of you who heard the little discussion, Jill will look into digitization or digitalization for companies. So she's really expert in this, and she will also take on about 5 to 10 companies that are willing to work with her to make this step into the digital world, not only in terms of marketing, but the entire process. So today is a little bit to giving a little teaser of the expertise we have around, and then we'll follow with more detailed webinars in the weeks to come, and hopefully then the individual coaching with the specific enterprises that have signed up for these activities. And I really urge you to do so, because the numbers are limited, so not everybody can participate, and these are really great experts to work with. So before I close and we make the little first round of introductions, and then we go into the individual presentations by our experts. Let me also, as usual, thank our our donors for making this webinar, but the overall project a reality. This is, as a reminder, the Swiss government as well as the Swedish government who provided us the funding for this project in Egypt. But as you know, we are also working in the entire MENA region, so we're also working in Tunisia, Morocco, and in Jordan. And thanks to our also to our closed allies and an institution that we're working with in Egypt, in Cairo, the Export Council, the Apparel Export Council, and the Textiles and Home Textiles Council. They are both there. So thanks very much, and also to the other institutions, especially the Fashion Design Center, for whom this workshop will also be very important, and of course the Ministry of Trade and Industry. But this should be it for my side. So with your permission, Yasmin, we just do a little very quick introduction, who is who, and then we move into the order of the different presentations, and there the speakers can give a little bit more details about themselves. Not sure who is first. I see Anne because you're just on my screen. That's
okay.
It.
Okay. I
think
yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. So hello everybody. Very nice to meet you all. Sorry, I've had a little bit of technical problems this morning. We've been Zooming at the university for 7 months to do our business. I've never had a technical problem until this morning, and when it wouldn't allow me to connect to sound, but thankfully I've fixed it now. So something a little bit about myself. I'm a professor and associate dean at the Calpoly Pomona in the Huntley College of Agriculture. I've been an academic for 31 years. I started my career in the textile industry in England. My focus is on the competitive and structural dynamics of the global apparel and textile sectors. I've worked with many companies over many years, and I'm really looking forward to working with all of you to deliver a great project.
Good evening and good morning, everyone. This is Mudita Senanayake. I'm the chair of the Apparel Merchandising and Management Department at Calpoly Pomona. I have been teaching for the last 20 plus years and doing research mostly on the manufacturing end and integration of technologies for personalization and customization of apparel. And I have been working both in the United States and in the industry before I became an academic in product development, production, quality, and also in the United States as in R&D, research and development. I've been working, have worked in both in US and in Sri Lanka as a consultant to the industry. And I look forward to working with all of you from the academic side, looking forward to meet academic institutions, look for curriculums and help companies to develop human resource for the needs of your companies. Look forward to a great project.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and hello, colleagues. I'm originally from Northern England in Manchester, where I studied fashion design. And it sort of took me on a very interesting global tour and moved to America and have been teaching and also as a design consultant. Worked on a lot of very interesting projects internationally, from Japan to China to Australia to Germany. A lot of brands in America, and also founded a business development center called Fashion Business Incorporated. I've been fortunate enough to work on other consulting jobs for the United Nations in Peru and also in Nepal. So I'm looking forward to working with you all and helping you understand the American market, develop your product, and got a presentation which is mostly visual, but hopefully I'm here and you can send me questions and ask me what you like. But I'm sorry about the backdrop, but I've been doing 36 seminars for Magic, and they made me that backdrop, and I'm not quite sure if I get rid of it, how I'll get it back. But anyway, so that's who I am. I'm looking forward to working with you all. I've been meeting with my 5 companies and very excited to work with you, and look forward to working further in this project. Thank you, everybody. Great team.
Hello, everybody. My name is Anne. Some of you already know me. Same as Francis, I'm working already with 5 companies. I'm an international management consultant and visiting professor at Calpoly Pomona. And I'm the founder of the brand Current. So I'm mostly working with clients on brand strategy and business development in a very international environment in the lifestyle, outdoor apparel, and also automotive industry. Previously, I've worked at Red Bull for 9 years, heading all of their consumer products, meaning all their fashion items, all their sports merchandising and licensing, and for Porsche Design in the brand management. And I'm really looking forward to continue working with all of you. Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Jill Mazer, and I have been working in the apparel and footwear industry for my entire career. Starting with operations and then working more on the technology side, helping companies improve profitability, increase visibility, and decrease costs with various technology and creating an infrastructure for businesses to be able to communicate amongst themselves, with their suppliers, their vendors, with their customers. I have spent the majority of my career as a consultant, but I've also worked for global companies such as Quicksilver, and they're developing their global business processes, as well as the director of information technology at another company called Michael Stars, which is a fashion knitwear brand. And I have a number of clients that I work with on a regular basis to either help them improve their process or make sure they are taking advantage of the latest and greatest in technology. I am very excited to work with you guys because I love working with smaller companies who are really at the ground zero of creating an environment for themselves in which they can be successful on the technology side. And so hopefully we'll have the opportunity to work together.
Perfect. I'm gonna stop share my screen and let Peter share his screen.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Thank you, everyone. Okay.
We can hear you, Dr. Kilov. You're muted. Dr. Kilov, you're muted.
Sorry. Sorry about that. So what I'd like to talk about for about the next 10 minutes is the impact of COVID-19 on the US textile and apparel market, and how it's impacted the economy, how it's impacted consumers and the retail and apparel brands. So these 2 slides are looking at US gross domestic product, and the left-hand one also includes employment. The chart on the left shows gross domestic product in real terms, that is with inflation taken out, although inflation is extremely low, on an annualized basis. So prior to the recession, the US economy was growing around 2%. There was a little bump in 2018 with Donald Trump's stimulus. But this year, it's expected that the overall decline in the economy is going to be in the order of over 6% on an annualized basis. Subsequently, there'll be a slight bump next year with growth a little under 3%, and then back to more normal levels. So what this means is a relatively slow, gradual recovery. It's maybe going to be 2022, possibly 23. according to when the economy will get back to its former self. But there's a lot of uncertainty about this. There's a lot of uncertainty just in the past few days that there was not going to be any stimulus bill this year, but now it looks like maybe we will move towards a new stimulus bill. But employment is expected to come down. In fact, it's already fallen significantly during summer and the autumn. But in the last quarter, it's expected that a number of holdout companies are going to release staff because they just can't hold on anymore. So some of the optimism of a few weeks ago is a little been a little dampened, and they see more of a gradual recovery in unemployment. The chart on the right is a quarterly basis for gross domestic product for the US economy. So we can see that for most of 2019, the economy was at around 2% real growth. But then there was a minus 31.4% contraction during the second quarter. And then a bump back up in the third quarter as the economy opened of about 20%, but this falling quickly for the beginning of next year down to around, in fact, less than 1%. So this is more of a U-shaped recovery, in fact, rather than a V-shape. So let's move on to consumer spending. So one thing to remember about the US is that 2/3 of the economy is based on consumer expenditure, and half of that is discretionary. US consumer confidence has improved sharply in the last few months. Of course, it took a complete dive in the spring and the summer. But in the last few months, the numbers have been good. People have been getting out there. Things were not as bad as people feared. So confidence has improved, but it's still comfortably below the pre-pandemic levels. So the chart on the right shows household spending in the United States taking a hit of 8.1% in 2020, with the clothing expenditures falling more sharply at 11%. So, and then this is going to be followed by a recovery, and clothing will have a bounce, partly helped by discounting to move older inventories. But then quickly the economy will go back to its kind of lower levels in terms of consumer expenditures. In fact, before the pandemic, US consumers were already trading down. There was a kind of a confidence of the long boom since the 2008-2009 recession that it was coming to an end was fairly widespread. And in fact, the discount culture that really got a big boost during that recession really stayed with the apparel business in the United States. A lot of the emphasis was on very low cost discounted apparel. With regard to their lifestyles, people were having busier and busier lifestyles and with much shorter attention span. This is a fairly long-term trend, but as people are finding things to fill their time and having lots of technology available to help them with that. A primary focus for consumers was on entertainment and products and services that are personalized, customized, and authentic. I think Francis and Anne can talk at greater length about these kind of trends in working with you. But there was growing unease amongst US consumers about societal values, about the state of the economy, and especially about climate change. But people's homes were a shelter from all of this uncertainty. And this stimulated a cocooning trend, expenditures to make themselves comfortable at home. The millennial generation, which is about 25% of all US consumers, and who drive much of fashion consumption and trends, are less materialistic than their predecessors, and they tend to live online. I'm the parent of 2 millennials, and I can tell you that's where they live. Millennials are more engaged with global causes such as sustainability, ethical practices in business, and social justice. And they've given stimulus to alternative retail channels. They tend to shop at secondhand stores, and they've given a boost to clothing rental as an alternative to buying outfits that you only wear once. So during the pandemic, consumers were dislocated from their normal lives. They were locked down for 2 months, working and schooling from home. And since then, there's been a gradual but incomplete and uncertain return towards normal. Consumers are still spending less time out. They still are under some kind of social distancing rules. They're unable to attend many events that they used to. And during recessions, consumers tend to reassess their values. They tend to shun consumption for consumption's sake, buying stuff just on impulse and because they feel like it. Fashion is a discretionary item, and US consumers have huge wardrobes. So actually they can go without new clothing for a while if they really need to. And in fact, the US apparel and home textile markets were especially hit after the travel and hospitality sectors in the United States because of this characteristic. But spending didn't dry up. Whilst at home and buoyed by stimulus checks from the US government, consumers increased their spending on cocooning type items, entertainment at home, exercise equipment, food takeout, and also apparel, buying comfortable clothing, reinforcing the general athleisure trend within the US market. And also an emphasis on community spirit. There was a lot of attention to supporting local businesses who could be struggling, and especially independent businesses, to help keep them there to get through the crisis. And there was an adjustment to contactless purchasing and delivery. Something, in fact, the US economy had become quite good at, but has now been spread to a broader and broader array of products and services and a much greater segment of the population. So the reopening of the economy saw a strong surge, but there has been some sputtering. Many people are still working and schooling from home. Some schools have opened and then closed and then partly reopened. And the same with shopping malls. And it varies. The important thing to know is that the situation varies from state to state. The US is a big place. And different states have different conditions. So government stimulus checks buoyed consumers through the worst of the layoffs. But now many of these are running out. And as I mentioned a moment ago, there hasn't been an agreement on a replacement for the original stimulus. So there's a lot of uncertainty right now. Although the latest announcements in Washington suggest that the gap between the two parties has narrowed on a future stimulus. So spending has regained some lost ground, stimulated by retail sales as retailers seek to move their inventories. So the new normal for consumers is going to be one of a different way of doing things, working, schooling, and buying merchandise from home, and different consumer priorities. Currently, consumers remain cautious and uncertain. They want to get out there again, but those desires are constrained by continuing social distancing restrictions and a certain amount of fear amongst a significant fraction of the population. So we're likely to see continuing cocooning and consumers seeking small luxuries, which fashion products can fit into. One of the features of the pandemic is people unable to go out to special events have been holding them at home and showing that and dressing up at home and sharing it on social media. And some people buying outfits especially to do that. And also families have taken advantage of the opportunity to have special family events. So there is a good prospect for apparel in that aspect. So on the longer term outlook, consumers are likely to put more emphasis in future on self-care. This has undoubtedly raised issues about their health and about their financial health. So they're likely to be more cautious about these two things going forward. And with increased home working, that some of which will stick, there'll be more importance of comfort at home. A lot is being said about the digital step change that we've gone through and how that will stick into the future. So a much greater swathe of US consumers has become familiar and comfortable with purchasing online for textiles and apparel. And consumer patronage of big retailers who can offer choice with good value and high-speed service is expected to be higher. So in some ways, it's believed that the big guys are going to win out as a result of these changes. And but a higher awareness amongst consumers of supporting local businesses too. So it won't just be about the big national retailers. And then so those are the changes we see, but some things we think will reassert themselves. So there'll be an element of back to business as usual in the future. A lot has been written in previous recessions that, oh, consumers have changed forever. But you know, when the next economic upswing comes along, we go back to our old lifestyles. So as consumer confidence and incomes recover, many spending patterns will reassert themselves. So we may not see credit card debt fueled spending like we have in the past. Consumers, I think, will be more conservative. But I think we will see a reassertion of the trend towards entertainment and experiences, and ultimately travel when consumers feel more confident about traveling again. Two areas that had hurt fashion consumption in the past. And the trend towards sustainability, towards ethics and inclusivity will continue. I think the big question is it really going to be accelerated? So much is being said about this, but I'm a little bit of a skeptic, but I do think they will remain important, sorry. And shopping at stores will rebound. They are not done for. It will rebound, and driven by the needs of consumers for experiential activities that get them out of the home, and about the opportunity for retailers to offer personal services and entertainment in store. So with regard to brands and retailers, before COVID-19, the US fashion sector was already bracing for a slowdown. And McKinsey estimated that around a third of brands and retailers were already in acute financial stress at the end of 2019. And those hurting the most were the bricks and mortar retailers. And this was attributed to the fact that so many of them were focusing on lowering prices and on low margins, the steady encroachment of online players, but also something that not many commentators paid attention to, but the huge financial burden and inflexibility of a long inventory-laden supply chain. The best performers have been the mass retailers like Walmart and Target, the off-price retailers like Burlington, Ross, and TJX, and the nimble fast fashion retailers like H&M and Zara. The ones hurting the most have been department stores like Neiman Marcus, the old variety chains like Sears and Penny, and specialty chains like the Gap and Abercrombie and Fitch, whose brand appeal is more limited. And before COVID-19, the importance of social media platforms and social media influences was already well established. So during the pandemic, with stores closed across most of the country for months, retailers were left with huge inventories, now out of season. Online sales were less impacted, but they were still down. Bankruptcies have been comparatively few so far, assisted by the government subsidies and flexible workforce arrangements in the United States, and the ability to reach consumers through an online presence. But McKinsey estimate that in the third quarter of 2020, up to 85% of fashion brands and retailers are insolvent. But the industry did pivot quickly to new lines, masks, protective equipment, and socially aware themed merchandise like t-shirts. And this provided companies with an important lifeline. The industry has also faced huge supply chain disruptions due to the pandemic closing factories, but also because of its own behavior in canceling orders and the uncertainties caused by the trade war with China. So post-COVID, the initial focus is on reaffirming and rebuilding relationships with consumers and maintaining liquidity by reducing inventories. Companies are rethinking their business models and accelerating moves towards an integrated online and bricks and mortar presence where they leverage consumer data, so-called big data and data analytics, to deliver personalized products and experiences to consumers. And we may also see a shift towards the digital factory, which I think Dr. Senanayake is going to say more about. So retail consolidation is expected with a shakeout of weaker companies, especially among smaller, local and independents, older format retailers such as Sears and Penny, and a reinforcement of the position of the industry's titans like Walmart, Target, Costco, and the now pervasive Amazon. There will be opportunities in market gaps as a result of the shakeout. Some commentators are saying that on the horizon, Asian brands are going to flood into the United States, and partnerships between smaller stores and e-commerce driven brands will grow, and small local stores will become order and delivery stations for online platforms. And another thing much is being said about is much less emphasis on China for sourcing in future, really due to the trade tensions between the two. But most of the US focus in that regard is towards Asia. So thank you very much. I'm sorry to move through it fairly quickly, but I hope that was enlightening for you, and I'd be happy to take any questions. So let me stop sharing my screen. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Dr. Peter, do you prefer that we take questions now, or we wait until the coming two presentations and then we take all the questions all together in the coming Q&A part of the meeting?
Sure, we have
a
Q&A after the next two presentations. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Yasmin, can you hear me well?
We can hear you very well.
And can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about the changing regulations due to COVID-19 and any policy developments or changes in the textile and clothing trade that I could find. So let me move this to a side. I did, as I could not hear anything or read anything about any specific policy changes or regulation changes over the last many months. And to prepare for this presentation, I did some research using academic and trade publications and talking to associations and people with personal contacts who are involved in the trade. And to tell you the truth, I could not find any. So there was no such major change of regulations or policy changes specifically written due to COVID-19. So it is too soon for us to see any such regulations. So having said that, so that was my presentation, and thank you very much. I'm just joking. So let's look at, so I thought of looking at 3 areas because I could not find any such regulations. So I looked at what is happening in terms of US imports. And in the next slide, I looked at what is going on in Egypt, the textile and clothing trade before and during COVID-19, such as the overall exports and exports to the United States. And in the next slide, I look at the sales of Egyptian products in the United States to see whether there are any trends that we can understand. So going back to the US imports, as you can see, I'm looking at the month of July 2019 versus the month of July 2020. You can see there's a 22% drop in imports to United States when you only compare the month of July. And when you compare the year-to-date numbers, that is from January to July of 2019 versus January to July of 2020, you can clearly see that there's about 27% drop of imports of apparel to United States. And for textiles, for that, it's about 12%, and overall, it's about 18% drop of imports to United States. Now, this can be due to COVID-19, and there may be other factors or attributes that can cause this drop of imports, such as the 301 duty, and so on and so forth. So when you look at the what is going on in Egypt, textile and clothing trade before and during COVID-19, we can see that the overall Egyptian textile and clothing exports have dropped over the last 3 years. If I look at the numbers here, the overall in 2017, there was a growth, similar growth in 18 and drop in 2019. And I haven't looked at why it has dropped, but just showing the dynamics of the Egypt textile and clothing trade exports. And if you look at the clothing, again, it has been kind of reducing over the time period from 2017 to 2019. And they're saying that there's a sharp fall where I could not find information. However, and of course for textiles, as you can see, a steady growth in 17 and 18 and a drop in 2019. Another observation is that when I look at the share of exports, Egyptian exports to the global markets, it's very clear that 1/3 of the US, of the exports to the global markets from Egypt is to the United States and EU. And of course, the rest, the next export lead is the Turkey and India and so on and so forth. So by looking at the exports from Egypt to United States over the last 2 years and moving into the 2020, the overall, as you can see, a growth in 2018 and 19, and of course, about a 19% drop in exports to Egyptian goods export to United States. Overall, this is the data considering up to year to August of 2020. And if you look at the clothing, the apparel side, again, there was a steady growth in 18-19, and it's dropping about 23% up to August of 2020. And textiles, it has dropped in 2019, but it has gained a little bit, about 3% in 2020. So it is interesting to see these dynamics of exports from Egypt to the world, as well as to United States. So this slide shows the sales of Egyptian textiles and clothing products in the US before and after the pandemic. So as you can see, the overall textile and clothing sales have dropped about 18.5% in 2020 from a 12% growth in 2019. That's the overall. The trends can also be seen in the best performing clothing types shipped from man-made and wool fiber types in 2019 to man-made and cotton products in 2020. So another observation, as expected, is that the worst performing clothing sales of Egyptian products in United States in 2020 are formal trousers and dresses and underwear. Of course, mainly maybe we are locked down and working from home. However, some textiles, such as man-made floor coverings, are doing better in 2020, and there's about 0.8% increase in Egyptian textiles in the United States. So by reading various articles and trade publications, just to see the impact of COVID-19 on trade, this slide shows such various impacts to the textile and clothing trade in general by the pandemic. So as you can see, one of the main disruptions was considered as the disruption to the supply chain. And there's a lot of discussion about the obsolete inventory and the need of new technology, especially digital technologies, to get rid of inventory in the future, which I'm sure Jill will address in her presentation. Also, some discussions on developing policies to reduce the power imbalance between the powerful retailers and their suppliers for a fair and sustainable trade was kind of observed. And also there is a fairly strong discussion about companies moving out of China, as Dr. Kilduff mentioned, and companies moving to online platforms while the consumers are cutting back spending or changing the consumer behavior, again, as Dr. Kilduff explained. And the impact of COVID-19 also has forced companies to rethink and work to secure environment well-being and ensure sustainable practices. So these are a couple of observations that I made as a result, or the considering the impact of COVID-19 on trade in general. Of course, as we expect during a deadly pandemic like COVID-19, there are a lot of health-related trends or discussions in the textile and clothing trade. Of course, not in just United States, but around the globe. So some of such examples are to provide training and improve safe working conditions to the employees in the clothing trade, and to develop guidelines for health and safety and well-being of the workers. And also to improve payment systems, especially for low-paid employees. Those are considered to be sometimes vulnerable. And we saw that in United States in terms of infection rates of vulnerable populations. So they're talking about these digital wage payment systems for that type of populations. And also very clearly, there were a lot of information and discussions about developing fabric treatments on fabrics to fight viruses and bacteria and so on and so forth. And companies such as Sanista Textile, HiQ, Ascend, Milliken were mainly discussed in publications. So, but looking at some trends in company policies, again, there are discussions, but there's no clear evidence to say that companies have changed these policies, but there are some discussions. So they're talking about new retail strategies, omni-channel retail strategies to avoid large brick and mortar retailing and moving into smaller stores, which they say more like showrooms. And also to use technology to assign a sale to a closest retailer called, it's called attribution retailing. It's another trend. And this is actually discussed in the concept of microfactories, how you can assign a sale to the closest microfactory to be produced and delivered to the customer closer to the factory. Then it is also evident that there are discussions going on in terms of how we change the wholesale business from B2B to B2C and so on and so forth, due to the challenges that the supply chains are facing. And also there are discussions on winning the customer loyalty through mainly focusing heavily on sustainability and corporate responsibility. Again, during a pandemic like that, there's a lot of discussion about sustainability and corporate responsibility. Another trend that was seen is that how slow fashion focus with the changes in the consumer behavior, such as trends for reuse and circular fashion trends, etc. So looking at those facts or the effects of COVID-19 on the textile and clothing trade, I thought to quickly bring this concept of a microfactory or digital production as an idea to wrap up my presentation, as this model may provide some relief for the demands we discussed previously. So some of the highlights of this concept is the virtual inventory that can address the inventory quarantine that we just discussed, the micro merchandising and purchase activated manufacturing, address the sustainability and the social responsibility aspect of it, and also allowing the customer who is in current view as very impatient and empowered, allowing them the opportunity to track and be informed about the product. This can be both B2B and B2C. And the idea to defeat the low-cost business mindset and for a company to pursue more profit mindset, not just thinking of reducing cost, pressing the supplies, but actually trying to gain more profit by adapting new digital production concepts. Of course, how you do that is with integrated, digital, flexible, automated production concepts. So thank you very much. And I think we are going to take the questions at the Q&A section.
Thank you, Dr. Mudita.
Yeah, I'm going to sharing the screen.
Okay.
Oops.
Now we'll move to the presentation of Francis. Dr.
Do you
Francis.
have it? Hi, do you have it?
Do you want me to share the screen from my side?
Yes, please, because
yeah,
I thought it was coming from you. I'm not sure. I thought you were adding a translation to it. I'm sorry.
Okay, no. So let me try to get it now. Anne, can you help me in this? If you have the presentation.
Yes, I think I have Francis one here. So
if not, I'll get it.
Sorry, I thought I thought it was being translated. That's why we sent them over. But
I have it. I have it.
Okay, let's see who is the fastest to pull it
okay.
up. Oh, Peter was the fastest.
Okay. Just tell me when to advance the slides, Francis.
Oh, I can't do that. Okay.
No.
Oh. There's no way I can do that, huh? Okay. Okay. I can't advance them. All right. Okay, so really we're talking about, are you ready for the changes of post-pandemic, working with American companies? Obviously, there are things that are always been there when it comes to having good management skills and understanding possibly the American market and how they do the business as far as demographics are concerned as well. So if you could go back a slide, I'm sorry. Okay, so building an international team will be pretty important for you. Understanding the American consumers. Okay, I'm not sure where we are. All right. You can go to the next. You can go to the next slide, Peter. Okay, thank you. Can you advance? Yeah. Okay, so your team should really have all these types of professionals involved in planning to build an international team, making sure that the people who are doing your designing it's going to be important that they understand merchandising and everything that obviously, because there's so much merchandise out there. So the visual connection to your customer is going to be key. So everything you do, and this is what we've been stressing with our companies, including their websites, making sure that it tells a story, it's merchandise. People know when they look at you, at your website and your merchandise, and they know exactly, okay, I recognize this brand. And so this is what you need to be thinking about. A lot of you are filling in sort of holes for people, whether it's for Walmart or wherever, doing whatever item, but it's going to be key for you to sort of understand, to merchandise your products so that you begin to get a recognition. And then, of course, you need somebody who can concentrate on sales, which has changed so much, as we talked about a little bit earlier on, distribution, and then, of course, the finance side of it, which is key. Thank you, Peter. So I'm going to try to go through these because there's quite a lot of slides. So I might skip through some of these. So Peter, be ready to move on. Okay, so so getting a good education and understanding of the foreign trade is important. We talked a little bit about that. Having people who can handle your custom brokers, your bankers, your insurance, all these things as far as documentation are going to be key. So having somebody who is concentrated as an in-house expert on foreign trade will be a very important part. And there's some really good help out there. You know, contact the US Trade and Commerce. They've got a lot of good help who can help you as well. You being a free trade country, that's a big advantage. Thank you, Peter. So get started. Understanding the market niche is key, because it's not just America's America. It's not. It's made up of all these different states, and each state behaves in a different way. Their buying pattern is different. So understand who your market is, and that's sometimes hard if you've not visited the states. So try to get even some investigation maybe online to understand which states are buying what the weather's like there, what is their economy like. So understanding demographics of America is really key. I mean, I've driven across it twice or three times, and it's very, very different. So have an understanding of what it is and who you're going to sell to, and why would they buy from you. Thank you, Peter. So as we know, New York is more like business-like. It tends to be a bit more suities and jackets. LA is more casual, more trend-driven, sort of more like trickle up from the streets. Dallas, they say, is sophisticated and dressy. Miami, glitzy, color-driven. Seattle, outdoor and earthy. Chicago, more like New York than LA. And then, of course, now we've got quite a big, more than southern markets, plus-sized customers. So having a good understanding of the market niche you want to get into is going to be critical for your business. Next slide. Thank you. We've talked about the changing workplace. A lot of people are going to continue from working from home, even when this horrible virus has made its way through. I've heard of companies closing up their bricks and mortar offices, and they're just going to let people work from home. So this is changing again what people are going to be deciding to wear when they go to work. Increased environmental awareness, sustainability is big. Having an understanding of what is sustainable, when we know that there are landfills full of fabrics and garments that will take millions of years to decompose. So now, as we talked about earlier, the millennials are very much aware of this, and they're concerned about the sustainability of their clothing. That's why a lot of them are buying secondhand, trickle-up effect. Casual lifestyles, you know, there's no more of, okay, my customer is a 20-year-old. It could be a 20-year-old, and it could be somebody doing lifestyle. We talked about with athleisure. Somebody who's 20 is wearing athleisure pants, and somebody maybe 60 is wearing or over. So it's not so much about your age, it's about the style of life that these people are living. And so this is another thing that's you need to understand the demographics. Next slide, please. Thank you. Which market are you going to fit into? Is it junior market, contemporary, Missy contemporary, plus size, better wear, bridge, men's, children? Understanding these dynamics and where your garment will fit is also important to you, so as you focus your style of selling and who you're going to sell to. Next slide, please. Most clothes are bought from these types of places, and I think Peter talked about that. So we're seeing a big closure of the big stores. Neiman Marcus closed up, a lot more closing up, and it's very, well, it was happening before the pandemic. So it's just what the pandemic has done is accelerated everything. So things were going more and more online for selling. And so, and people have got a less attention span. They're not spending a day walking around a mall. They go in, buy the store, maybe they want to go to a particular store, go in, pop out. There's not that concentrated day shopping mindlessly. Maybe they're doing that online more. So, you know, these are the things you need to be thinking about getting into the head of your consumer. Next slide, Peter. Thank you. So again, American fit is very different. I'm from England, and the European fit is different from the American fit. They have no rules and regulations as far as sizing. And so you really need to investigate when they say, you know, a size six, what exactly is a size 6? I always suggest you go to someone like Banana Republic and check online what their sizings are like, so that you can see and identify what kind of sizing you're going to go into. And what, you know, when you're talking about 0, small, extra small, small, medium, large, extra large. So thinking about what sizing there are, and so that you can adjust your own sizing to the American market. Sending samples that fit an average 0 will not work. So you need to be thinking of developing your samples in say a size 6. Men are taller and heavier, which of course means kids trend to also be larger. Next slide, please. Color is a thing that we first notice, especially bright colors. So we're rather cautious with prints. That's very objective. So thinking of what kind of color palette you're going to create is also going to be important to your consumers. So thinking of, we always say, well, as I talked about earlier on, somewhere like Dallas, they tend to like bright colors. And so, you know, someone more up north might be wanting the darker colors. Like we always say in the Europeans, they tend to go more on the duller, darker colors. But I don't know whether that's got anything to do with the weather, but it seems that the bright colors tend to be in the warmer states. Okay, next slide, please. Merchandising, this is the key to your success. So have an understanding of how to put your garments together. If you're doing separates, give them alternatives. So if you design something without a sleeve, it's got a great body, why not do the same body and put a sleeve in it? Why not do it a skirt and make it in different lengths? Think of how to merchandise it. People, because the trends are so, there's no real trends these days. You wear what you want. So giving people an idea what looks good together, depending on body types, colorations. These are things that are getting very important to people, is how do I put these pieces together? So we've all got wardrobes full of different garments. And if someone could come in and restyle you, help you understand how to put these pieces together in different ways, whether you're dressing up and dressing down. Honestly, merchandising now is more important than anything else. If you were going to go into study fashion design, I'd say study merchandising as well as design, really. Next slide, thank you. So rules of costing, make sure that you have got a good understanding of your costing, and make sure that at the end of it, you make money and you don't lose money. So working those cost sheets, remember to work them every season. Even if you've got carryover styles, things change. Thank you, Peter. So building a brand, that means consistency. Consistency throughout the line and the season. But however, you need to be innovation. And this brand building could also be about the fit of the garment, as we saw with jeans. They were buying the jeans they liked because they liked the fit of them. So building a brand is very important. So retailers and customers come to recognize and, of course, want to return and buy them. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So foundations for merchandising a brand, the role of a merchandising, it includes every department of the business, line development, time and action plans, planning volume, budgets, merchandising calendar, details, key dates for planning, selling, producing multiple lines. Each stage will have an impact on a successful retail sales of the garment. Part 2, thank you. Okay, merchandise planning, target market is consistently analyzed. If the market is over merchandised, are saturated with a product, then it would not be wise to manufacture something that is already out there. Market analysis involves studying the current market, trends, anticipate the needs for the forthcoming season. New fashions evolve. So these are the things that you see slowly evolving. So what are the new fashions? Well, we're seeing, of course, most of it's going to be athleisure. Market research, very important. You've got to be out there understanding what people are buying. Look at the markdown racks. Why are they there? Sometimes they're ahead of the trend or they're just over the trend. So thinking about what is your market niche, again, goes with your demographics. Okay, of course, weather is very important. Next slide, please. Color, first thing that people notice. So have a good idea of what you need to always have in there, whether you're going to have your whites, your blacks, and then, of course, what you're going to fill in between, what will go with it. Merchandising, the prints to go with the plains and vice versa. Next slide. Fabrication of a garment is a second connection to the consumer. Again, we talked about sustainability, so making sure that if you are going to incorporate, which you certainly must think about incorporating sustainability, this is also about building your brand. So if you include some sustainable fabrics, or you're making sustainable garments, making sure that this is part of your branding process. This is part of your own story. Thank you. Next slide. Colors for each season. Do a storyboard. You'll see this a lot. Finding particular pictures you like, understanding the trends, put them on a board. You start building a storyboard that will then help you guide for your next design season. Building a brand, building your own storyboard. Next slide. We may have what is an example of merchandising. So you can have a line. Within the line, you can have a group. Within the group, you will maybe have that group is emphasized on vintage cars that will influence the prints and the shirts. And it's some part of these inspirations, of course, you can push it further. So subdivide these sheets into groups that better relate to one another, fabric types, colors that could be grouped, styling, and trims. So this within the group, you have fabric types, colors, prints, trims. That group is within one line. So in the line, you may have 5 different groups. So forces you to focus on your design, and merchandisers as well will help with sales pitches. Next slide. So I'm just going to go through some of the examples of what it is that goes into design and merchandising. So these are obviously just merchandise little examples. So lines usually subdivided in groups, which I think I talked about. So the styling within each group should have variety, yet carried out the central theme. To present a visually pleasing group of dresses, the line need to only have a few elements in common, such as fabric type and color story. Also, of course, manufacturing emphasis only on few silhouettes, bodies or styles in trade, interpreting each look of them in several prints, or it will feature one print or one graphic in a variety of different styles. Next slide. The groups within the collection, we talked a little bit about that. I think we can go to the next slide. Coordinating sportswear, the objective is to have the individual styles mix and match interchangeably. Fabric combinations must be carefully thought out. Should be a variety of coordinating skirts, pants, jackets, and shirts and blouses, the tops in each group. So again, coordinating these pieces so that they relate, even if they're different fabrics, they should be, or different prints, they should be able to relate. Consistency of theme with color, fabric line, and detailing to tie the whole group together. This is very important. Next slide, please. So this is a client of mine who, this is a lookbook. So you just click through it. So I don't need to talk about each page. Thank you, Peter. Just click through the lookbook. I just want you to see how, when you look at it, you can see that they are merchandised to match. there are pieces in it so that there are trims that relate, the fabrics relate, the whole body is, you can see it's one particular group within that line. Okay, I hope that's helped you understand what you need to be thinking about. I'm here to answer questions, and we'll go on to the next one. Thank you, Peter. Sorry.
So Yasmin, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here. I was just thinking if we should have the Q&A now or wait after the presentation of Jill.
Does anybody have a question that they would like to ask now, or we can hold the Q&A till the end? And I think we can ask orally or via chat.
Peter.
Hi there.
Hi, this is Amir. Can I ask you two questions?
Sure.
Okay. The first question is, as far as I remember, you mentioned that during 2021, there are expectations for the market or the demand to increase 7% compared to the decrease that happened this year?
Yes, that's a partial recovery. So, and it's expected. And you know, the thing is, if you look at 6 different agencies who are predicting what's going to happen, you get 6 different answers. So the numbers I gave are kind of like a consensus clustered in the middle of the cluster. So it's really quite uncertain. But one of the things I was thinking, I'll come back to that point in a moment, is we can actually update you as we go along over the next few months. That as new information comes to light, we can kind of send you an update sheet on the current situation and the current forecast for the US economy. So that won't be difficult for us to do. But the recession in clothing expenditures was sharper than most sectors within the economy, except for travel and food and hotels. So anything travel related, plus people eating out and drinking out. After that came clothing. So clothing had one of the worst experiences, somewhat offset by the fact that companies were able to switch into mask making really quite quickly. But there'll be some bounce back. In fact, my son has a part-time, he's a university student, but he has a part-time job in a retail store, and he says his store is busy. People, even though traffic in malls is controlled, he's actually saying it's quite busy. So we know that there is a bounce back, and that growth rate is really a catching up some of those lost sales. But then it'll expected overall, clothing will lag the recovery in the US economy.
Because I thought if that's true, then it's a no-brainer that all factories should be ready for a big demand coming to be able to grasp all that, all of this sudden demand or something. This is what I was thinking about.
Well, I'd be cautious about it. So first of all, remember that there was an awful lot of merchandise that was made for spring and summer, which did not find a market. And I think, as Meditha said, those inventories were quarantined. Companies have sat on them to think about what are they going to do. They don't want to destroy them. They can't afford to. Of course, some of that inventory is still in the pipeline. Not all of it came to the United States. So there will be some inventories from spring 20 that gets repurposed for spring 2021. I think that's one of the dynamic things that we're currently watching.
Okay. The second thing, before I waste everybody's time, is that you said because of the trade war with China, you said America will go to China. I thought I misheard that. I think America will go away from China because of
Yes.
the trade war, not to China, right?
Yes, yeah. The US, so US companies are wary of, you know, it's become more and more difficult to actually import from China. The US has got really quite strict on Chinese merchandise, but a lot of US attention is towards Asia. Rather, they're looking east rather than they're looking east across the Pacific Ocean. They're looking over the Pacific Ocean rather than looking in the other direction across the Atlantic Ocean. So, but there is an opportunity that the perceived risk in China is relatively high because of the low intensity trade war we're currently in, and the possibility that might get worse. And of course, companies don't want to expose themselves to this risk. So in the medium term, they're looking for alternative places, and this it will benefit other suppliers. And I think Egyptian companies can look at getting their share of some of that resourcing.
This is what I thought as well. Thank you very much.
And in supplying that, speed is going to be of the essence. I do think that one of the things that companies will look at is not having those extended, slow supply chains. That speed is going to be speed and flexibility will be more important going forward than it has been in the past.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there any more questions, or we can move to the presentation?
Excuse me, I just want to ask a question. First, how the marketing activity is going to be done, because most for B2B meeting is not available in the next days. Trade fairs are not are not available, or at least not like before. Maybe it could be reduced. So how the factories can market themselves? This is the question.
I would say, if I may jump in, your organizations could help you set up some sort of representation in America. I'm not sure what the names of the organizations are in Egypt that Dr. Kilduff and Dr. Medutha, you're going to be working with the universities, I believe, right?
Yeah, we are working both trade institutions and the universities, I think.
I would say that your organization should be able to help you with the marketing and to outreach to possible clients that would be suitable for your particular products. So it's going to be a new marketing skill. I'm sure Anne can add something to this, but it's, again, you're going to have to get those websites so people can go and identify immediately and understand what kind of garments you made. And for the most part, most of the websites, they were good, but they were not focused enough on what it is you're doing to build a brand. And I think working on your website and your presentation and your brand itself and what you can do, whether you're doing, again, we talked about there's going to be smaller orders. Can you adjust your orders to produce smaller orders to smaller cuts? And that should be also part of your website. Again, of course, you're going to have to cost it a little bit more, but I think people are going to realize they're going to have to pay more money for clothing anyway. So, Anne, have you got something to add to that?
Yes, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about it in my presentation, but of course, it's a very good question. We know that now, especially like most of you being at Magic, the whole like way of doing business has changed. And this is going to be difficult. But I think most important is to keep in mind the way to do marketing will be digital. And that was already, I think, the development in the last couple of years. So we have to kind of work on step by step to transforming everything which has been done in the past into like digital trade shows, but also a different way of communicating, same as we are all on Zoom right now. And I think it's going to take a little bit of like learning within the organization how to reach out, how to build network with not having face-to-face meetings. And so I think that's the only way we see right now, is really like preparing in a very good way for digital communication.
And that's a very good lead into my presentation. Thank you all. And that was an excellent question. Shall I start?
Perfect.
Yasmin, shall I start?
Yes, please. Yes, please, Jit. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, hello, and thank you for joining me today to talk about how software and technology supports the global apparel and textile industry. That could not have been a better lead-in. Technology is the foundation of business operations, and it's also the communication between suppliers, vendors, factories, customers, and even consumers. Most of you are already using technology in your business in various ways, so today's presentation is a very high-level overview to give you an idea of how these digital technologies can be interconnected to better support your business operations. Before this meeting started, Amir made a very good point. Companies are no longer able to conduct business in the same ways that they have been doing for ages due to the global pandemic. What we're seeing is a requirement for digital transformation, and companies need the digital tools to run their businesses, to communicate with customers and vendors, and to operate in a global economy. So what is digitization? It's the process of essentially converting information into a digital format, whether it's a pattern, a marker, a design, or even a purchase order, an invoice, or payment. Digitization can help you streamline your business processes, consolidate your information into a single place for reporting or analysis purposes, and create more efficiencies throughout your supply chain by connecting you with customers and vendors. In order to become more efficient and profitable as an apparel manufacturer, companies have turned to technology to solve fundamental business issues. There are several types of tools that can improve productivity, and today we'll be talking about material requirement planning, also known as MRP, enterprise resource planning, also known as ERP, electronic data interchange, known as EDI, supply chain management, known as SCM, and product lifecycle management, known as PLM. So we like our abbreviations quite a bit here. Also, I'll use the term vendor portal, which exists within multiple of these systems, and it allows vendors, suppliers, and customers to directly access information and data such as patterns, tech packs, and even inventory positions. So material requirements planning, is the software-based production planning and inventory control system. It's used to manage the manufacturing process. ERP, which is enterprise resource planning, contains MRP in it, but it is also a company-wide software system that's used to manage and coordinate all of the resources, information, and functions of a business, from inventory, work orders, cutting tickets, purchasing, invoicing, credit management, payroll, and financial transactions, among other things. So kind of an illustration of what ERP is all of these different aspects of your business are all tied into this ERP system. All functions within an ERP system are interconnected and tied into the financial system for accounts payable, accounts receivable, financial reporting, and sometimes even payroll. EDI, electronic data interchange, helps connect your ERP system to other companies' ERP systems through a series of interchange transactions, purchase orders, shipping notifications, invoicing, sales orders, return merchandise authorizations, and more. It's primarily used by manufacturers, brands, and suppliers, and it helps reduce costs and eliminates errors and increases visibility to your customers and suppliers directly. Looks something like this. It sends and receives data to and from individual customers and suppliers. So the data for all of these transactions is secure and it's unique to each customer or supplier. It contains your specific information and their specific information. A customer would only be able to order products that you offer to them. They would not be sending you orders for somebody else's products. The same with you sending a request to one of your suppliers or vendors for materials. You would only be sending that request for your products or your materials, not somebody else's. Supply chain management, or SCM, is the software tools or modules used in executing supply chain transactions. It's managing supplier relations and controlling associated business processes. It allows companies to interact and monitor global supply chain partners in real time with visibility into purchase orders, material commitments, and inbound and outbound shipments. Supply chain management software can interact directly with your ERP software and includes accounting functions to support customer requirements planning, purchase order processing, sales, distribution, inventory management, receipt of goods, warehouse management, and supplier management and sourcing. So supply chain management software can track and support transactions all the way from raw materials to the end consumer. Supply chain vendor portals allow real-time visibility for suppliers, factories, vendors, and customers with order statuses, financial transactions, shipments, and also any disruptions to the supply chain. So if you want to know if something's running late from one of your suppliers, you are able to see it through the supply chain management software. And same with your customers as well. So this is a really great way for everybody to stay on the same page, literally, with all of that information. Product Lifecycle Management, or PLM, is the type of system that is for companies looking to design and develop their own merchandise. So something like Frances was talking about in her presentation. Product lifecycle management is the process of managing the entire life cycle of a product from its inception all the way to commercialization. So essentially taking it from the design idea to the point where you can actually sell it as a finished product to your customers. PLM addresses planning, merchandising, design, costing, sampling, and sourcing to help you track product development through to a customer approval. It can also contain material and trim libraries, your tech packs, testing, compliance information, change control. So when you make a change to a product or you make a change to a material or a cost, it can track that information in there as well. And most important, it also contains a vendor portal to allow vendors and customers to collaborate directly on products and sampling. I like my illustrations, so I always add them into presentations. So if you think about PLM, it has everything from concept, design, develop, merchandise, and marketing, sampling, and approvals. It supports all stages in the product development process, from product concept to commercialization. Once the product has been approved for production, the product information gets pushed to your ERP system. Okay, so here is an example of what that looks like. It's a very simplified view of these different systems and the way they can relate to one another. And what I haven't touched on today is anything having to do with shop floor control, production orders, work orders, and the things that are taking place within your four walls of your factory. But a lot of those transactions can take place within this ERP system if it's not already taking place in yours. As you can see, these applications are designed to work together to create digitized business processes, saving your company time and money and improving your technological capabilities to support global transactions. Companies today need the tools to increase profitability, improve customer satisfaction, streamline business processes, and attract global customers. Most companies already have technology to help deliver better, faster, and less expensive products. But think about how much more efficient your company would be if you had these interconnected tools that help eliminate extra work, decrease errors in data entry, and increase your productivity. And think about how much easier it would be to send and receive information instantly to your vendors and customers. Thank you. And do I have, should we be taking questions now, Yasmin, or shall we wait until Anne has finished her presentation?
I think we can go ahead with the presentation from Anne, and then we can have all the questions at the end.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Perfect. So I know I'm at the end. You have heard a lot of good information already. And all of this is so valuable for marketing strategy. So I know this is a topic everybody worries about, like there's a lot of competition. How do you build the right marketing strategy? And I also like to closely connect it today with your business development strategy. And we're going to talk a little bit of like the traditional part, which is less, but then of course of the virtual part. Okay, so a successful marketing strategy is not only based on like, oh, let's do some social media or do like little isolated activities. It is really strongly based on your business model and go-to-market strategy, and that needs to be defined first. And I think why is this so important at this point to mention is that world has changed, and it has started to change already before COVID, and now everything has been accelerated. So how does your new business model look like, and how do you want to go to market? So some of your strategies might need to be reviewed and adjusted right now. And this is a painful process many times, but absolutely necessary to really like also succeed in like what we have as a reality at the moment. So what I mean by that is really your customer value proposition. So what are you offering? And I want to go into that also in my next slide. So for everybody to have realistic short-term and long-term goals and visions. Right now, we've all been thrown into like suddenly doing a digital trade show, suddenly needing to communicate. We are all on video. I think nobody is fully comfortable sitting in front of a screen all day long and seeing ourselves on video, but this is the only like really connection we can all get to each other at the moment. So we have to adapt on the short term, but then we have to plan the long-term vision and really long-term goals. What does it mean long-term for our whole setup as a company? And of course, this involves always your resources. I know that like most of you are very like have tight resources, of course, and team capabilities, like who can do what. We need a full, in many ways, we need new skill sets. All of us need to learn new skill sets, like and we see it like technology doesn't always like come easy to us. So and with that, I want to refer to also like what Jill presented, like your systems, your technology, everything you have set up will become even more and more important, and also for your marketing strategy. So all the presentations you heard before me are basically essential to what I'm also going to talk about now. And I want you to look at this chart. You see like on the x-axis, I'm showing you an internal dimension and an external dimension. And this is basically just like a chart to show you how your marketing and business development is really intertwined. So what you see in green here is your design, product, and your development, all your manufacturing capabilities. And especially Francis talked about how important your merchandising strategy is to really know what does your customer need. And especially now with not being able to be at a trade show and handing people like a sample and showing how like good your craftsmanship is, what you're doing, this is even more important to communicate well. So in today's marketing, communication and being able to transmit information virtually is probably the most important, and it's going to stay this way. So there's no way around it. We all have to adjust to that. So this chart is showing you basically that you have like your internal resources, and they need to be also adapted and changed to make sure that you can address your customers appropriately. And that means everything from your design strategy, your overall product strategy, your like IT systems, your logistics, your whole supply chain. We heard in all the presentations like speed to market, one of the most important factors right now, and has been already. Customers need flexibility, and I'm talking about your buyers and your like sourcing managers you're communicating with, but I'm also talking about your end consumer. So e-commerce setup and your websites, really essential part. But again, the reason I'm showing you this overall chart here is to make sure like it is very important that you look at your overall business model and also your internal dimensions first before only thinking about, oh wow, what is my marketing presentation or strategy. All of that feeds into your storytelling and who you are as a brand and building your brand towards your customers. From that, looking at your business models, I know all of you like we have a lot of different type of companies like offering different services. So clarifying what is your business model also, and I'm saying it because I think some of you rethinking also their business models and thinking about maybe we want to change something because we know we have to change something. So some of you are only offering manufacturing, some of you full service design, development and manufacturing. I've seen some having OEM and private label and available products, and some of you have direct to consumer brands. So all of these different business models are asking for a different marketing strategy. And that's important to keep in mind to also, even if you offer two parts or have different business models in your overall view, make sure to really differentiate your strategies and address your consumer, be really specific who you're talking to about what. And again, this is even more important because we can't all sit in a room and explain it again and again. People have a really short attention span. They're gonna listen to it maybe like, or read your website in a couple of sentences and are like, oh, this company is not offering what I'm looking for because they've missed the point. And that's a big risk right now. So this is important to avoid. And now looking at overall, like what marketing methods and opportunities are out there. And most of you already using some of them. So in the middle, you see the target groups, and Francis talked about that. Like it starts from the target groups, of course, offering the right design and what are people looking for. Think of sustainability strategies. Think of how much corporate social responsibility it has more influence on consumer decision making. So make sure you know your target group well and differentiate in your communication. And it starts for me with you see here on the left side, the little icon, storytelling. And your storytelling is more important than ever. All of you are like, have amazing capabilities and you have like very unique skills also, means your factory, your employees, what you're offering. Start telling the story. You need to create an emotional connection. And that will only come across in your communication, in your marketing tools. If you work on that internally and say, okay, this is what we stand for as a brand. This is what we want to offer our customers. And I also know some of you have worked that out really well already, but think about it again. I think that's my also push a little bit here is like, how can people and buyers and consumers connect with you as a brand and not only, I don't want to see you only as a service provider. You are a brand, as a factory, each individual of you. Of course, you see the next one is pricing. Like your pricing is really important, especially in this competitive environment. Depending also like how you've done your pricing, we're gonna look at that also a little bit later during the next couple of months. Moving into the next one, online shop content. This is your face to your target consumer. And it takes time and a little bit of investment to have a good website, and even then maybe next level, having an e-commerce site, but very important. We knew that already the last couple of years, but now basically it's one of the essentials. Then also social media, and social media, I'm obviously not talking about like Instagram or Facebook only, especially LinkedIn. And that's something I've been working also already with some of you on, connecting via LinkedIn, in like searching for ways how you can build relationships and how you get really like inviting people to your showrooms. And we know that, and we're going to talk about that, that magic is difficult for everybody, but finding alternative ways of connecting with your network and people looking for what you're offering. And then also search engine optimization, SEO, Google your company. Can you be found? What is like really like you have to be found. A lot of startups, a lot of companies will look for, okay, let's search who's out there. What are the factories we can work with? And then of course also to like events. And here I'm talking about, and we're gonna work on that as well. For example, working with the Export Council, like making sure there's enough network also within the country. One thing is like going directly, and we're talking about the US market, but also as stronger as your ties are and your collaboration within the country, as stronger you can also really work outside the country. Then of course, trade marketing. We're gonna work on a lot of like trade marketing packages. How can that look like? What do you need to have to attend a trade show, and especially a digital one, and your customer relationship management. This is basically the full circle of the tools available right now. And these are still these are still the relevant ones, COVID or no COVID. These are the tools which need to be in place, maybe in a slightly different way, maybe emphasized in different ways, but you still have to build this whole marketing mix for your brand. And looking at like the next 3 slides, it's only 3 more slides before I'm done. I have the essentials, and then I have 3 levels for you. The essentials, then the next level, and the excellence. So what is the foundation you need right now to be able to survive, I call it also. And it's of course your customer service focus. And so far, like even what I've seen in my communication with all of you, you have such strong, valuable ethics towards your customers, and like your politeness and friendliness, communicating, which is great. So that's a great foundation for your existing customers, and of course potential new customers. But your website, that's something where I think everybody needs to go back and review your communication. Is everything clear? Have people who are not working with you read through it, and also point out your USP. Why should companies and brands work with you? What we have provided here is, and you've all received it as far as I know, is an e-commerce self-evaluation presentation where you kind of can go through that and see, okay, are we delivering? Are we like really communicating who we are? You don't want to miss out on that, because you have a lot of like, you have so many assets already existing. Make sure you communicate those. Have a professional company profile on LinkedIn. I'm not talking about just the individual like contact person. I'm talking about you as a company. Have your logos up, have your description, have links. People will check if you work for that company or who is that company. LinkedIn is definitely used a lot. So that's on the social side. Then your sales and marketing tools like catalogs with professional product photography, your line sheets, buyer inquiry templates, and also trade show order specials. So that's your trade marketing package. And I know most of you have been working on that, but definitely like this needs to be super tight at the moment because of the lack of personal interaction we're having. Have a great also brand presentation and a one-pager why brands should work with you. And I want to point out everything also Peter and Mudita said about what is happening in the overall market situation. You have an opportunity with the shift from China to other sourcing countries. Egypt is a very good alternative, but not everybody might know. How can you communicate that? Make sure this is one of your main selling points, like the duty free also, and that comes then also your certificates, like how easy it is to work with Egypt, that you have to tell people. They might not know because they have been the last 15, 20 years, they had a like tunnel view, I call it, on looking at China and Asia. So very important. And that can be a one pager. Then your virtual showroom, of course, needs to be just looking perfect. And think of also all the other trade shows you can attend. Everything is going to be digital for a while. I hear that most trade shows for the future will be split between physical and digital. I heard just from the German trade show in Munich, the ISPO for sportswear, they're going to do a digital and physical. I heard from a lot of events in Paris taking place next year, planned digital and physical, because people are also aware that some companies might start saving costs also in the future and not sending all their people traveling around the world. So just keep that in mind. How can you show the best in a digital and combined physical like show? And then of course, solid customer service strategies like follow-ups with your customers, having set up that, and also not giving up on any leads you gotten. Like we all have a lot of emails. Everybody is overwhelmed by communication. Sometimes you have to call a couple of times or email a couple of times to get through. That's what I call the essentials. And then the next level, which is important in your B2B marketing, is also, besides of just having your website, going and having news, talk about what you're doing, innovation, technology. Buyers want to see, and also like sourcing managers, that you're keeping up to like even sustainability. Like don't just mention it small in like some side sentence and your ethics as a company. Like there's so much more to talk about. So have somebody update your website and have maybe a news section and start storytelling. And this is a good practice on the B2B side, but also for prepping for maybe going B2C in the future. This is an essential part for that. Emphasize your selling points and uniqueness. Like if you haven't worked that out, do like really try to identify what are we standing for. I mentioned that before. I know in the essential part, you might not have the time because everything is like right now super overwhelming and nobody has time to sit down and think again, but important. Try to identify with your team, what are we standing for? What makes us unique? Try to add references and testimonials and think about creative way of generating leads and do a proactive outreach. With the digital shows, you might not be able to just go from like, oh, we are standing at a trade show booth is not like working anymore. So how can you connect? Go to events, conferences, congresses. There's like out there's a lot still digital events where you have breakout room sessions and can discuss with people and connect. So that's the next level also on that side. And of course, developing your marketing and business development plan and a project schedule, which is like a 6 months outlook. And we are working with some of you on that, like to really know, okay, we are not just driven by an inquiry comes in, but we are proactive in our doing. And now I'm coming to my last slide. I know it's after 10 already, after 7 on your side. So what is the excellence? Like when you're done with your first 2 levels, what else can you do? And maybe some of them might be already in parallel, but very important. And also Mudita mentioned that in like having coalitions is really big. Like, and I call it also like on the collaboration side. Who can you collaborate in Egypt with, but also the US? Is there organizations, institutions, universities, the Export Council, all of that connect as good and get stronger as a in unity also, which is more important with the current developments. Also being collaborate with brands, with your customers. Maybe like one example I like giving is Everlane. And Everlane is sometimes maybe like some people say it's just a marketing effort, but on the other side, Everlane is known for promoting their factories. So try to build up also relationships with the brands and your customers you're working with to offer transparency. Who are you working with and promoting you as a factory? And also another option could be joining manufacturer databases. We have here in the US something called Makers Row. If you have a US-based office, which some of you have, you can have a profile there. There's other platforms. So really make sure you invest into networking. We talked about building strategic alliances with brands in Egypt a little bit. So I know you're all like focusing on one hand side, of course, in the US market, but also how can you get stronger on that side, and which helps you then with your communication and exporting to the US. And very important, always work on ongoing competitive analysis and consumer trends. You've heard like what is happening right now, and we know there's still industries profiting right now. So definitely like there's always opportunities and like making sure you find those niches and then adapt your merchandising strategies, design strategies, go-to-market strategies is extremely important. Okay, so I know I went kind of fast, but because we are short on time a little bit, and that's the marketing part. Yasmin, do you wanna, should we first do questions and then jump into the preliminary feedback on Magic?
No, I think you can go ahead with the feedback, and then we start with the questions right after.
Okay.
We are a little bit tight
perfect.
on time, but I think this is how we should do it.
Yes. Okay, perfect. So maybe I'm just gonna start with a couple of sentences, and then Francis can join in. And I also would like, actually, and it's an empty slide, would like everybody who's already participating, maybe saying a couple of, or like maybe Amir, or I saw Ayman is here, maybe to say like 1 or 2 sentences, how it is going or your impression. Overall, and I mentioned that, the show is challenging because of the limited opportunities to network. I think there's a lot to learn for the future and for the upcoming shows. And that's maybe the most important also takeaway for now, to constantly work on what will we need in the future to be able to do a successful digital show. And that means your materials, because there's limited time of reaching buyers, but also outreach outside the show to invite people to your showroom. So we definitely see a limitation on how the system works right now. And maybe Francis, do you want to jump in and say just a couple of sentences of your impression?
Yes, I think that it's not only been sort of a learning experience for the exhibitors, but also for the attendees, but most of all for the Magic itself. This is the first time they've had to build an online show, and it was all done, I mean, an incredible amount of work. Andrew did a really good job, but there's a lot of things that need to be improved, and I think they will get better. I think they will be much more detail oriented to different countries. And I think there's going to be more help as far as hopefully connecting the buyers to the exhibitors. But also the exhibitors, from what we've seen, also need to definitely work on their own exhibits to make it clearly defined as to what your brand is, what you're offering, and learn this whole online marketing experience. That would be my takeaway. I just think it will improve. Not sure when I spoke to them. I don't think it's going to happen live next February. So I think there's going to be another digital show that we hopefully can all work on and improve and bring better results for everybody.
Nice. Perfect. So that's our like first preliminary, with the show still ongoing, obviously, and still like we're constantly like working with everybody to make sure we leverage it the best. And maybe I'm not sure, Amir or Ayman, or I saw also, I think Gaurav is here. Does anybody want to add maybe just 1 or 2 sentences to your experience firsthand?
Anne,
Yes.
in the beginning, you know, when you don't know about something, it's like an enemy, or you don't like to do it, or you don't want to do it. But I think the changing point is to look at it as an opportunity, not as a threat. And we don't have any way but to be engaged a new virtual world and new digital transformation. So once everyone starts to look at it like an opportunity, and I'll dig in, as they say, and do my best to make it happen, there is no other option, whether you like it or you don't like it. If you depend on your social skills, sense of humor, you know the customers already, you know how to talk, and this is taken away from you, that speaks on behalf of the company. So I agree that it's challenging. I agree it's new, but we have no other option but to like it and try to be friends with this new world. It's not difficult. I hope everybody, even the show itself, make the effort to make it easier for the companies and the customers to connect. And we are flexible to do whatever requested. We are requested to refresh the photos every now and then and put new photos of our products to make it look like an energetic or like an interactive relationship with the customers, and hopefully we can fish something.
Yes, I think that's very well said. And I like how you said it's an opportunity. And I think that's the most important for everybody to remember, that it is an opportunity, and like it's just important to adapt. Thank you so much for jumping in. Maybe one more person. I'm not sure, I don't see all of you on video, but maybe Nada or Yasmin Ayman from International Textile House, or Gaurav from Cleopatra.
Also, we have Sal, I think, from Safeguard.
Yes, we have Saleh from SAF Garments.
Yeah.
We have Gaurav from Cleopatra. Nada from International Textile House.
Hello friends, this is Gaurav. How are you doing? Thanks for the presentation. Yes, I agree with Amir what he said, and the responses I'm getting on Magic Digital is quite good. In fact, I was not expecting that. So it's really it's not a great show, but it's going on, and we have 3 months, and I hope it is going to do quite well, because when we do live shows also, we are standing there for 3 or 4 days, and Amir will agree with me that we are not always busy. We are getting many customers, many people are coming, but then eventually we find 1 or 2 which clicks. And that's what is happening here online also. We are getting every day new people inquiring, new links, and we are responding to them. And I am pretty sure that within next by the time the show ends, we'll end up being linked to 1 or 2 of the customers, which is quite enough for us, for every one of us. So of course it is learning, it's challenging, but it's not bad. It's good. That's what I feel. Thank you.
Good.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yura. Oh, so maybe we can go to the questions if there are any questions from all participants. There was actually a discussion on the chat box regarding the percentage of Egyptian exports to the US. And Shireen, the executive director of the Apparel Export Council of Egypt, try to clear things out and say that the 50% that Saleh was mentioning is the 50% of the Egyptian exports from 50% of the total Egyptian exports of apparel are going to the US market and not of apparel and textile. So I hope it's clear. Nada, you want to add something?
No, actually, I wanted to thank you for this video conference, and you made some good points during this meeting. And Anne, thank you for sending the buyers list. I didn't have the chance to yet look at it, but we'll do so really soon.
Yes.
And yeah, basically that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yasmin, I have a question for Anne.
Please.
Regarding the storytelling, do you mean by the storytelling it's a company profile, an e-catalog?
Yes.
What exactly? And if you can, in a very briefly differentiate for me, because we have a lot of new terms being used. Like e-catalog, e-commerce, company profiles, a lot of things that are a little bit confusing for us all. So what's the difference between the e-catalog and the company profile? To my understanding, they are both of them. It's a PDF that we send electronically or something like that. So if you can help me out with this.
Yes, of course. It's a very good question, and you're right. The terms and terminology. Sometimes it's the same thing for we have three words for the same thing. So let's start with the storytelling. When I talk storytelling, I'm looking at from a broader perspective. I'm basically looking more from the strategy side, thinking about identifying as a company what are your what is your uniqueness? Who are you as a brand? So the storytelling is more in everything you do as a company and then communicating that. You could communicate it on your website. You can communicate it in Ecatalog or a profile on LinkedIn and talk about saying, okay, what we are specialized in, what our values are, what our innovations are, why we stand for sustainability. So it's more like the storytelling terminology I'm using in my presentations from the brand development side. And then that would be identified on your side as a company, and you would basically write that into your e-catalog, into your company profile, on your website, on your homepage about who you are as a brand.
Okay. And
did that clarify
the difference?
Oh,
yeah, what's the difference between the e-catalog and the company profile?
So the company profile would be on your website or also on LinkedIn. I'm not sure if you know, on LinkedIn you have a possibility besides of as an individual person and employee of a company, you can have a full-on company profile. It's basically like your personal website in a smaller version on LinkedIn. That's what I meant with your company profile on that side.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the e-catalog is basically what you have in addition to your regular website as a download, or you send to buyers, which would repeat partially what's on your website, your service offering, who you are as a brand. And then additionally, of course, photos, lookbook, whatever you have in there.
And not to interrupt, Anne, but you can use the PLM tool that we were talking about, product lifecycle management software, to create those e-catalogs. to create a visual representation of your line along with product information as well. And that can be updated seasonally as you develop new products.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I quickly say that jargon is going to be a big issue. When Frances was talking, she was describing the traditional segments of the women's wear market, junior and Missy. And I remember when I came to the United States, I thought, what's that? What's junior? What's Missy? So there is some jargon and terminology to be clarified on, because these are what are commonly everyday terms in the US market.
I see there's a hand raised. Yes. Oh.
I see Resha Fahim has raised her hand.
Yeah, hi. This is Rasha Fahim. I work as the Executive Director for the Textiles Export Council, mainly for the fibers, yarns, and fabrics. Actually, my question was about the marketing methods. Would it be so different if we are targeting a sector, as you thankfully know, that we're working to promote the whole sector and to represent the whole product range in the abroad markets? So I was seeking an advice of your expertise. Would it be different than the marketing approaches that we have seen in Anna Christian's presentation? Or would it be different, especially that traveling is banned nowadays and it's not easy to access exhibitions and to meet stakeholders frequently than before the COVID-19. Another thing is, thank you for such a valuable presentation you all made. That was extremely helpful and fruitful. Thank you so much for all the efforts done. That's it.
Thank you. Maybe I'm jumping in from the just marketing side, and because it's something we have discussed as a group also. All of us, we were saying that we see two levels, and one is also from Egypt, like to have a general unique selling point and kind of promoting why Egypt is a good country and a good country for like a good sourcing country, and what are the selling points here. So I think there's always the individual marketing messages of the company, and then there's the same as you have Peru is known for certain capabilities and expert in certain areas. We think it's definitely important to work on a general marketing strategy for working with Egyptian companies, and that would be super valuable because that can transfer into each company's marketing strategy as well. But then we have a consistent messaging for everybody.
I got your point. Thanks so much.
And also, one of the things that when I had interviews with those trade experts, one of the things that Bobby who said was that the Egyptian cotton, actually, a lot of Egyptian cotton goes to Turkey. Why not that can come to United States? So when you see this shift from wool to cotton in 18 or 19 to 2020, I was just thinking are we taking those kind of things into consideration? Or is that true that a lot of Egyptian cotton goes to Turkey? Why not US? So again, I haven't done research on, is that true that a lot of cotton goes to Turkey? But those are things I think that I'm sure the Export Council is looking at it.
Yeah, actually your information is correct. It's different if it's a cotton raw as a fiber or it's a cotton yarn as a threads. If we're talking about the raw cotton, it's not mainly for Turkey, but if we're searching for the cotton yarns, the threads, it's correct. Turkey is the first country that dealing with Egypt importing cotton yarns. So we're still having an opportunity, and this This year, actually, the last quarter, we have noticed a booming in the export, not with a huge amount of quantities, but there is a growth of the textiles exports from Egypt to the US, and mainly with the non-moving products. I think because now the manufacturing of all the medical equipments and the medical needs, so US has imported a different amount than before of the non-moving products. So I think we're still having a very good opportunity for the next year and for the future.
And another thing that that came into our discussion was that I think Jordan and Israel has authorized industrial zones, and is Egypt taking advantage of that? Was a discussion. Again, I didn't go to find information on that, but we can definitely take a look at those kind of.
Maybe I need the answer for my colleague Shireen, because she knows better than me in this aspect of the QIZ protocol.
Can I jump in?
Yes, that's why I called you.
Yes, we are taking advantage. Egyptian apparel, Egyptian exports and home textiles are zero duty-free to US through the QIZ protocol. It's between Egypt, Israel, and US. We have an obligation to use 10.5% of raw materials or in the supply chain from Israel, like packaging, accessories, buttons, zippers. Some people, they have fabrics, they have threads. So they are obliged to use 10.5% of the materials from Israel to be eligible for the duty free. I hope this information is beneficiary for you. I have a question to Peter.
Yes.
Hi, Peter. It's always a pleasure meeting you. I don't know if you remember that we met in at the Magic
yes.
last February.
I do in the tent.
Yeah. Regarding the international demand, we've been reading and knowing that there will be like a 35% decrease in the international demand on the apparel. What do you think of this? Is this information true, partially true, or 35. It's just far away from?
Sorry, 35.
35 decrease, 35% decrease.
Or globally?
Sorry?
Are you talking?
No, globally, no, internationally.
Right.
Not only to the US.
Well, I think different countries around the world have had very different experiences. The European Union currently seems to be one of the most challenging places, and of course, Latin America too. I mean, there's two sides of this pandemic. One is its impacts on consumers who aren't able to go to work, are concerned about their current and future income. And the other side is disruption to supply chains, that factories closed, factories not able to operate at full capacity, disruptions in terms of getting raw materials or distributing products through retail channels. So there's quite a lot of disruption. It seems Asia is actually East Asia is in a better position than South Asia and Europe and Latin America, and North America is kind of in between. But I don't know that it depends what the time frame is. I think when we're looking at individual months or quarters, then that kind of depression we are seeing. And as I showed the data from the US government, that only was actually came out about 10 days ago, showing that the US economy contracted 34% in the second quarter of this year. And that's a common experience across these countries that have been greatly hit. But I think there will be a bounce back. So I think when we look at year-on-year data, I don't think it's going to be as high as 35%, and next year will be better. But I think what the finding in the US is, and the US has a fairly flexible economy, and in the US, the government gave money to workers, to people. Whereas I think in many European models, they're actually giving them to companies to give to their existing workforce. But in the US, actually the workforce has been partially unplugged, and then some of them are now finding new jobs in the emerging, the buoyant sectors of the US economy, say like working for Amazon. So I'm not sure that it's going to be such a big hit to the industry globally. I think there will be a bounce back, and as I mentioned earlier, as these things, this is happening in real time. As we go forward with the project, we'll keep monitoring this, and we'll give you updates at intervals as things become clearer. And we can add a global element to it, not just US.
Okay, thank you.
And I see Saleh has a question, and Matthias has hands raised. Saleh, you want to go first? You are muted.
You're on mute.
I'm sorry. Thanks for all to have us in this webinar, and it's a pleasure to participate. And from staff crew, I thank you to all. As you said, McKinsey in USA said there is a new bankruptcy, and some retailers have a problem for payment terms. Our main customer asked us in current times to change our payment terms from cash against document to be open account with a credit around 4 to 5 days. So I think it's a risk for this current times. Our customer may maybe sell these products for American retailers, and I think there are a choice. These retailers maybe go to bankruptcy, Chapter 11, and I think it's a risk. So this is for current customers, and what is about new customers and prospective customers? I think it's current times. But I think what is your advice for us to coping this current times? This is our question.
I think be very careful. As I said earlier, McKinsey, a big finance and consulting organization, considers over 80% of US apparel brands and retailers are in severe financial difficulty because they operate on small margins, and they've been left with all this merchandise that they were unable to sell, most of it, for months. And so it has to be true that many of them are in very difficult financial circumstances. They want to stay in business. They're looking to push risk onto their suppliers. So I think you have to be very careful. Something that might look like a golden opportunity, but anything that where there's significant financial risk, I really think I'd be very, very careful about engaging with that. And I'd look for companies that can give you some degree of certainty. I mean, there may be bank services that can assume this risk, but I'm sure they'll come at a high price.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we're the stores will charge back, or they'll say take it on consignment. I'm not sure what arrangements they're asking from you, but you've got to be very careful because a lot of people, as you know, are desperate. So finding a way of making the payments before they're released, what exactly are they asking you to do?
They ask me to, this customer is our main customer, and ask me to change our payment term from cash against document to be open account around 45 days credit after they receive the goods. But I have a long term with this customer around 15 years. But I think what is about new customer? New customer, I think maybe some customers have already inventory, and this is, I think it's a stock, and he can't ask his main suppliers to supply, but maybe can find new customer or new supplier to ask him. But I think this current times it's critical for marketing for new customers. But I think I hope to find new customers in Magic, but we have to search a lot of these customers and financial statements and something like that. This current times, I think it's a critical time for new customers. This is my question.
But you have to think logically about your risk, because you're manufacturing the goods, that takes a certain amount of time, and then you're shipping, and now they're asking for 45 days. So, you know, it could be that you're buying your materials and then having produced it yourself. You're taking all the cost risk on your own shoulders.
I get some quotation from many customers with a huge amount, but I think it's maybe have and he already have his current suppliers, and this new customer maybe ask for a fresh one. Have no deal with him, have no cancel orders. I think sometimes it's critical.
I think they would have to give you some kind of rock solid information to trade at on a risky basis. I think. US retailers have a standard model is to pass the risk, and so this is you'd really want some rock solid information to be trading on such a basis with them.
I think
and also Sally, one thing I found from talking to these industry experts is that in the West, in the LA area, you can't find warehouses anymore. Everybody has quarantined their inventory, expecting them to sell later on. And the largest factors, Wells Fargo and another, I think ATC also, are actually facing a lot of issues. There are a lot of lawsuits going on, and because of a lot of bankruptcies. So it's a very, I would say, hostile financial situation in not just in the United States, I think in many places. So as Dr. Kilda Francis said, you have to be very careful in making that decisions and promises.
I see the example in April, I think it's from Bangladesh. He was crying before Al-Adha festival for ASDA cancel, ask him for 50% discount. And I think this supplier shared this email from ASDA around 50% discount from ASDA in UK. But I think it's critical fine. Thank you. Thanks for all.
Sure. I think Matthias.
Yes. Yes, Matthias. Can you please jump in? You have your raised hand for too long.
Yeah, thanks very much. Also, thanks very much for a great presentation, or combined presentation. I have two questions to maybe the first to Francis and to Anne, and the other one maybe what Mudita was mentioning. So Mudita, maybe also Peter. The feedback on Magic, but if you compare this to other trade fairs that you know about, is it more or less the same thing? That these trade fairs also lack the experience on allowing for real networking possibilities, or is it something very specific to Magic? And then the other thing, what was a more strategic thing, is Mudita was mentioning microfactories, and so the sales activated manufacturing and the attribution retailing. And I wonder if this is something happening in the market. Is this a risk for Egypt, or can it also be an opportunity? So that's basically my two questions I have.
Well, from my experience of, just to go to your original question, my experience of the other trade shows that are going online, they're all having the similar issues. I just think it's going to get fine-tuned, and it's like a learning experience for everybody, and how it's going to improve over time. Hopefully we can eventually get back to networking and being in person, but at the moment, having an identifiable showroom online is going to be really critical for the companies, that they need to really work on their displays and their merchandise, as I was talking about earlier on. But to capture people walking by or looking at your goods, I don't know, are you putting them together? Like, this is the Egyptian pavilion, and there are certain things that Egyptians can offer. It's free trade and all the rest of it. I think there needs to be more sort of push as a group that can also help them, maybe with the organizations that you're going to be working with, to help them develop more of a team to assist promoting these companies, the Egyptian companies. We might take away.
Okay, and maybe I can comment, and after that, Dr. Kilduff can further comment on that. I think the attribution retailing and micro factories, of course, if we go to the extreme, it can be a threat. But I don't think we are there yet. But what I thought, what is important for this presentation is to take the concepts that is in those strategies, like attribution retailing. So how can we take that, not going into the extreme where the sales can activate for any retailer to ship the good from their distribution center or their small stores. Rather, take that concept into wholesale and how you do business, and also the purchase activated manufacturing. How can you actually try to do that in wholesale to a certain extent? I think if you take the real concepts into consideration, you don't need to go to the extreme of making one product and in the factory in the United States and selling it to a local customer. But I think what we need to learn is how to take that concept and think in terms of how can you do this from Egypt? Can you do that in the wholesale business? Again, then going back to Jill's presentation, and if you have the technology in place, and if your supply chain is so robust, I think you can do that. This is another thing I heard from talking to these trade experts. They said today there are haves and have-nots in terms of retailers. So those retailers, some of them are doing really, really good during this pandemic, and some of them are not doing good at all. So there will be a division of who can do and who cannot do. I think thinking of the future, what we need to do is try to understand what these concepts are and apply them to the way we do business.
Yeah, I think we believe digital printing of textiles, that's 2D printing color, solid color or patterns onto textiles. We believe digital printing is a strategic technology and one that linked with a kind of just-in-time manufacturing approach is going to be something that gets a boost from the pandemic. The technology has been around, it just hasn't been well integrated. It's actually been demonstrated at previous Magics. So we do think business models that use just a just-in-time approach to minimize the inventory flow and make product based on consumer demand, also enabled by those point of sale data analytics. And actually, none of this is really that new. This is what Benetton did in the 1980s. And Benetton switched from dyeing yarns and then making knitwear from dyed yarns to actually knitting undyed sweaters, and then just doing garment dyeing to color a proportion of them. Send those out to the retail stores and then capture immediately which colors prove popular, and then they would dye the rest of their inventory according to the popular colors. And so it's business models like this which are responsive that are going to become more and more important going forward. I hope that answers your question, Matthias.
I really think there's got to be a whole new business model, and as far as maybe selling direct to the consumer is another way they need to think about, which can be beneficial really, because they're cutting out that middleman and they're selling direct. So if there is more concentration on building up a direct market to the end consumer, maybe it has to have an Egyptian showroom, or you may have to have warehousing here in America, but this is where maybe the organizations could help the companies to help market them within the market, and also help them sell direct to the consumer, because as we know, the big retailers are struggling like crazy. How much longer they're going to be around, we don't know. So you have to have an alternative plan, and I think that it's all possible, but it needs to have a plan.
I think when the International Trade Center and the Swedish and Swiss government started this project, nobody thought of COVID-19 or anything like that coming along. And yet here we are now in the middle of it. And it's very disruptive, but disruption brings about opportunity. And it's going to shake out some of those older ways of doing things and some of those older companies, and it's going to open up new opportunities. And I think those opportunities will emerge. So I think companies need to think about understand US consumers, the target customer groups they want to go after, how they will reach them, how they will communicate with them, what channels they will use, and what business model will support that business, and what technology will support that business model. And then what skills do the companies need to acquire to attain those objectives? All of these things, which are all built into this project, are going to come very important. But I really think with the changes in technology and markets, I think there's some significant opportunities for companies in the US market.
Thank you, Dr. Peter. I think and thank you everyone. I think we already exceeded the time with almost 50 minutes. So I think we have to end this. Matthias, do you have anything to add before we end the meeting?
Oh, just thanking everybody for being there. We'll make sure that we'll share the presentation with everybody, so that we have it. You also, Shireen and Rasha, you also heard that there's now an opportunities, at least for the beneficiary companies of this project, to get in touch with at least with Francis and with Anne-Christine for marketing and branding strategies, for not only for those who are Magic, but also other companies going forward, and the same with Jill for digitization. So we should communicate to the company that there's this opportunity. And then I was just thinking loud now, I was not sure how did we announce, market this webinar, but these kind of webinars I think should be open to all kinds of companies, not only beneficiary companies. If it comes to the individual coaching, this is then a different story. But when we have a next one next time, I think we should widen also the audience, so that also other companies that are not necessarily beneficiaries of this project, but which are members of the councils or interested in Egypt, or institutions that are not necessarily our specific focus institutions, could also be invited.
I totally agree, Matthias. This would be great. Yeah, because the webinar is very beneficial and there's a lot of information that most of the council members would be interested to listen to. So I totally agree.
Okay, so we do next time. So
sure.
Thank you very much, everybody, from my side.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.